Silent Hill 4, The Horror of Being Seen by the Sphere Hunter. I very much liked their video in regards to their non-spoiler breakdown, our spoiler reaction breakdown of Resident Evil Requiem. And I was told that this was a very interesting take on Silent Hill 4. So we obviously watched the Totally Pointless TV one, and people, they like the longer reactions. I personally don't take the recommendations of longer reactions, as over like 40 minutes, I kind of have to like keep that within my own realm of what is and isn't possible, especially with 14 plus videos a week. So the longer ones just take a while to get to. However, I very much like their last video that we reacted to, and I'm told that this is a very interesting take on the game. So without further ado,
You know, I haven't played Silent Hill 4 The Room as much as its 3 older siblings. In fact, before I replayed it for this video, I can recall myself maybe finishing the game 3 separate times throughout my life, making today a special milestone as I mark my 4th return to Henry Townsend's Homesick Nightmares. If you've ever had even a passing interest in the classic Silent Hill games, you've most likely heard people describe 4 as compelling but complicated. Maybe a little too difficult, or perhaps not very good at all. I played SH4 pretty close to its release, and while I remember finding the game bewildering, I never disliked it. Things began to change when I started using the root of all of our problems, the internet. For years, I'd watch and read the opinions of others who found the game confounding. Through a mixture of not having access to my original PS2 copy, and taking the words of those who started YouTubing before me as gospel, I would sadly adopt the general consensus as my own feelings towards The Room.
I think we're all kind of guilty. Tommy Wiseau says The Room. I feel I like the switch there. The commitment to the Eileen cosplay is also pretty peak. So I'm guilty of this as well. Ex-YouTuber said this, ex-streamer said Y. Therefore, I think this is mostly in the past for me specifically. As it turns out, I really just don't care anymore. At a certain point, and this is a broad generalization, right? Like, at a certain point, you kind of just say that everyone's kind of an idiot. But, like, you don't actually say that they're an idiot. It's like, it's weird. Like, you just kind of dismiss it, right? And then you formulate your own opinion. I think that's the natural progression that people tend to go with. So, when I heard of a game through Totally Pointless TV, like Silent Hill 4 The Room, and how controversial it was, because I very much like watching games first. I like understanding it first before I dive into it. I don't know. It's weird. I like soaking myself into the medium before actually playing it. It's reverse of what people usually do. Yeah, I guess a lot of consensus was that game bad, game controversial, and I follow his point. In this video, he mentioned that the ghosts were pretty controversial, and he doesn't quite know where he stands on it. And I kind of follow the same suit. I don't know how I feel on the ghosts. I see the benefits of them. I see why mechanically they're a thing. They put a timer on you. They make sure you can't just camp, right? Like, it gets you moving. But at the same time, that can also be a detriment. They also throw them to you real quick right out the gate, right? Like, I can kind of see both sides of things. So you can also come to the same conclusion, but independently of whatever, right? I don't know. It's a weird one, and I think that it's become more and more prominent in the digital age. Like, as someone who's played RuneScape, right, I have my reservations about Jagex, especially EOC 2. We finished the beta. It was extended by additional weeks, so 5 weeks, and they still go and nerf melee and magic. And we just sit here like, what? And then they buff magic again. And I'm sitting here like, did we not have 5 weeks of open beta just for this? It's like, I don't understand, right? But I mean, yeah, like Sphere Hunter brings up, the root of all problems is the internet, right? I can tell you if I sit on Reddit too much, right? I don't quite go to 4chan. That's kind of my limit. I don't touch 4chan. But if I sit on Reddit too much, or if I listen to too many YouTube videos, it feels like it's its own degenerative spiral, right? I'm a huge fan of formulating your own opinion, and I've said it many times here on this channel. Like, what I do is derivative, right? I react to content, right? Simple as. Even then, I still champion come to your own opinion. You could disagree with me on a point. You could disagree with the original video on points. That's fine. That's healthy. It's an interesting point to bring up, and it's especially relevant because Silent Hill 4 The Room is so divisive. It is very much a divisive game. And knowing that going in, I think helps to kind of like disarm a lot of the criticisms and allow you to enjoy the game a little bit more.
Wait, not this room. Don't get me wrong, I love this room. After playing the recently released Silent Hill F and enjoying it quite a bit, I couldn't help but think how similar I found some of the combat in relation to the Silent Hill 4 I had in my memories.
Dude, I wish I could still play that game. We tried streaming it day one, and it hard shut down my PC twice. Like, that game was cursed. Kind of like if you saw our original Helltaker stream. This was way back. And my PC like shut down, and there was like pink demonic script on my screen. There's a picture of it floating out there somewhere, I think, in the Discord server. It'd be cool to finish that game. I was enjoying it, and then it was actually hard crashing my PC, so I'm waiting for stability patches.
Well, I guess those were a bit foggy, because outside of an endless amount of enemy battles, a few breakable weapons, and a ton of melee charged up attacks, SH4 felt completely unique to me on my recent replay. Instead of ridiculously playing the game in 1 or 2 marathon play sessions as I would have before, I did things a tad different this time. I replayed SH4 over the course of a week, spanning multiple hours-long play sessions where I really took my time. I read through every file, traversed the multiple horrifying otherworlds carefully, got the best ending, and pieced together my own personal reading of the room's subtext that I'd never considered before. I'll be honest with you, I came away from the experience loving the game. I basically role-played SH4, and it was great. If time has proven anything, it's that video games with contentious release reception will always inevitably get their time to shine. The Silent Hill franchise is no stranger to this phenomena, as basically every entry in the series have gotten their own positive re-examinations over the years. From Homecoming to Downpour, Origins, and Shattered Memories. I'm sure you can find a glowing review for Book of Memories, but I couldn't. That being said, each non-Team Silent endeavor have received more than one positive retrospective from, get this, fans of those games.
Weird. I don't believe you. Reddit says these games are bad, 0 out of 10. Therefore, it must be true. Because everything you read on the internet is true.
While my opinions on those particular titles will undoubtedly shift in a direction, today we'll be focusing on the first Silent Hill that dared to be different. The word of the day is change, my friends, so get cozy, because we're literally trapped in my apartment.
Nice.
Let's see how Team Silent's The Room changed Silent Hill.
A special news report. In a forest near Silent Hill, the burned corpse of a 30-year-old male was discovered earlier today. The police have ruled it a homicide and are investigating. The numbers 17121 were reportedly carved into the man's body. Due to the marks on the victim, the police are investigating possible links to the Walter Sullivan case 10 years ago.
I love the IRL footage spliced into this. I think it's really cool and thematic.
In my SH3 video, I talked about due to a lack of sales following SH2's release, especially in Japan, more games would have to be developed to make up for that title's costs. Silent Hill 4's development actually started while 3 was being made. Having the foresight of where SH3 was going with the series' return to Game 1's story, the other branch of Team Silent would take 4's creation in a radically different direction. If you're even remotely interested in horror gaming, you've most likely heard of SH4 starting its life as an original title disconnected from the Silent Hill universe. This is a common misconception born from a possible misunderstanding from an old developer interview. According to most of the staff, SH4 The Room, codenamed Room 302, was always meant to take place in the Silent Hill world. SH2 director Tsuboyama Masashi would return as chief designer, handling game design, art, and the creation of characters.
I actually really love that even as surface level as my understanding on the Silent Hill franchise is, and certainly not playing most of the entries, right? Like, I'm very much aware of this misconception and misunderstanding because the people I've watched have done, they've done their due diligence, and they've done their best to, dispel misinformation about how, oh well, this was supposed to be another series in its entirety, or another game its entirety, and they slapped the Silent Hill name on it. So I very much like that the community is very proactive in dispelling misinformation and disinformation like this. Like how, well, Silent Hill is based off of Centralia, Pennsylvania. That's also a misconception. The movies, as I understand it, are, but the movies are disconnected from the games, so no, like the Silent Hill games are not, in fact, based on Centralia, Pennsylvania.
Murakoshi Sugaru, Game 2's cinematics director, would take the lead director's chair this time. Series composer and producer Yamaoka Akira would also produce and work on SH4 while working on SH3. You might think Yamaoka would make an equal amount of music for both games, but no. He actually composed 24 tracks for 3 and 35 for SH4, albeit a large amount of them go unused in the actual game itself, but they exist. There are some artists who live and breathe their craft day and night, and Yamaoka is one of those artists. I guess it makes sense when you consider his collaboration with the other musical legends, Joe Romersa and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who also came back for 4. The cinematics director of SH4 was a man by the name of Tsujimoto Atsushi, who helped create the chilling Fallen Angels-inspired cutscenes that intro each of the game's horrifying ghost enemies. Tsujimoto would also go on to be chief director of the recently released Silent Hill: The Short Message, which, if you've never played that game, is filled with SH4 references. Play 4 and then The Short Message back to back, and it's gonna feel like you've played some bizarre young adult novel rendition of the game you just played.
I would love to play stuff like this. I know that there's a Reddit board, right? Or at least there's a Reddit post that details the playability of each of the games. And if you own a legal copy, obviously, right? Because, dumping the legal copies, trying to play them. And I know there's some of them that are just impossible to play, but I think it's because they were actually like mobile games. Like, it's fascinating how many actual games Silent Hill has and how many of them are actually playable. Like, it kind of runs into the Pokemon problem, right? Of like, man, you could have got this V-Create Rayquaza, if you were in Japan circa black and white era, right? Because, Smogon does love their V-Create Rayquaza. A lot of sets use it, right? Or this mystery gift that you're locked out of, right? Naval Island Birth Rock, prior to Fire Red Leaf Green being re-released on the Switch, right? Or the GS Ball, Gold Silver Crystal, prior to its 3DS Virtual Console release, right? Were you in the areas that these are being distributed? No. Well, I guess you're locked out of content, right? I'm usually against things like that. I think it's additive. I think it leads towards a more social experience, but at the same time, the detriment is for the long-term health of the game. Definitely very much FOMO. I don't really hear people talking about that much. That you want to talk about game FOMO, that's pretty bad in terms of FOMO. So yeah, I'll have to give that a look.
It's pretty interesting. Something that was important to the team this time around was being able to successfully sell this game in Japan. The Resident Evil series always sold better in Japan, so a more action-packed change in direction was needed. So the team thought. With that idea in mind, actually coming up with an appropriate concept was difficult. A lot of ideas were proposed, but ultimately turned down for being too different. At one point, SH4 was a party-based survival game. That,
so Resident Evil Outbreak. Got it.
in particular, is especially interesting when you realize that SH4 has the largest cast of characters in the franchise. They were
Yeah, no, it's not wrong. Richard Braintree, Eileen Galvin, right? I mean, the whole list, right? Cynthia Velasquez, I think, right? Walter Sullivan. We can technically count Walter Sullivan as 2 because young Walter, old Walter, right? It's got a pretty big cast. Like, you compare that to, because I played the Silent Hill 2 remake. I didn't play the original, but I've definitely watched Totally Pointless TV's videos on it. Reaction when, Quip? Yeah, no, the cast is definitely large in 4.
probably party members at some point. Director Murakoshi would end up creating the game's final concept. SH4 would be a much more hands-on experience in almost every area of the game's design. The flow of the action, the thrills of the combat, and the amount of story you'd take in. Even events like cutscenes were in the player's control this time. SH has always been a little more action-adventure than survival horror, But the games always set out to tell horror stories and put you in uncomfortable, scary situations. It was horror adventure. Silent Hill 4's core design was action first, so series staples like the flashlight and radio that would slowly uncover the world and monsters around you were removed. Environments are made much brighter and in some cases smaller, and the camera system would be fully fixed to facilitate the game's action design. What's funny about stripping back these iconic elements is that I personally find Silent Hill 4 the scariest in the series. Instead of slowly finding the horror, it's all nakedly laid out before you. You can see everything on screen at all times, and it can see you. The most notable change SH4 brings to the series was the complete removal of the town Silent Hill. For most of the
mostly. You technically do get to see it.
Game, you never actually step foot in the titular town. Instead, a majority of your adventures take place in a variety of nightmarish otherworlds.
I was under the impression that the wishing house was actually in Silent Hill proper, but I'm more than welcome to be proven wrong. Like, that's the thing, is like my understanding on things is often incomplete, or at the very least true from a certain point of view. I'd be open to the wishing house. I'd be being wrong, right? I was under the impression it was technically in Silent Hill proper. You actually do see Toluca Lake, next to it as well.
Inspired by the fears and dreams of the residents of South Ashfield, a city neighboring Silent Hill. This story would explore the fear of one's own living space, a horror close to home. With Ashfield being an urban environment, the narrative theming would explore fears more acquainted to a dark city. Stalking, voyeurism, mass murder, the usual grand theft affairs. One thing I found interesting reading through older developer interviews was the lack of acknowledging the actual town of Silent Hill. To me, it almost felt like two Team Silent Hill games didn't necessarily need to take place in that old haunted town. As we saw in Heather's story, hauntings and nightmarish projections can manifest miles from the origin point. If Team Silent's desire to move out were ever in question, then think about what they decided to name the main character of this game: Henry Townsend. This ancient evil has evolved and seemingly taken root in a new home. As you'll see, the room's terrors might be the most inwardly catastrophic. And on that note, I think it's time we take a deeper dive into the nightmare world of Silent Hill 4. You excited, Robbie? You're actually in this game quite a bit.
Got him.
I don't have your data. I got an email the other day talking about the fiend smashing my computer with this butt.
What's gotten into you? New suit?
Yeah, I got a new suit, alright.
Robbie, what's wrong?
Let's see how you like being trapped in that room sphere.
I'm getting South Park vibes from this. I love this.
Silent Hill 4 began.
I honestly thought this was gonna be a segue into like a VPN ad read, if I was being honest. I was totally ready for it. I mean, I thought it was a jam-packed intro. I honestly enjoyed it. As I talked about in our prior reaction to Totally Pointless TV's retrospective and analysis on the room, as somebody who streams, mostly does like YouTube, right? React content for a living, and unfortunately isn't able to really get out much. Not just from work, but like just. Social isn't necessarily something that has ever come easy to me, but also just there's not really people my age doing things, if that makes sense. Like, you can only show up to a game shop so much, right? Like, I will only get so much joy out of, say, I don't know, showing up to Magic the Gathering in my local area. It's the same player base, has been the same player base for, more than a decade. Just kind of stagnant. And even then, they don't even play the formats that I play. No one plays Modern in my area. No store I know even plays Standard anymore in my area. It's all just Commander and Pioneer, oddly enough, right? Like, the Yu-Gi-Oh community's, even in a weirder spot. It's been the same people for the past 2 decades. So, like, it's, something preventing, spirals and loops, etc., right? Because you need to do things, you need to have experiences, right? And you can only do so much growth if it's the same thing, right? The Room actually was an interesting game to play as somebody who I'm quite literally looking at my door, right? And I feel it, dude. I feel the opening scene with the door. I really do. It's like you can't leave. So I think it's really interesting to kind of have that kind of be my life, so to speak. And then go and play the room. It was kind of a really surreal experience.
Silent Hill 4 begins inside a dream. A man awakens in a twisted bedroom. A scream rings out, drawing him into the living room. The walls covered by a thick layer of flesh-colored film. The doors refuse to open. The TV static, mind-numbing. The windows fogged over. And a photo of a man unknown to our current protagonist hangs on the wall. Next to the portrait is another depicting a pile of 21 corpses. On the coffee table, we find an old picture book. The story is about a child and mother connected by a magical cord that, once severed, leaves the child alone in a place called Wish House.
I think I missed it. I mean, I definitely missed the picture with the 21 bodies. Somehow I missed that note too, or maybe I did. I don't remember. I played it on the gaming channel and made a lot of references to Totally Pointless TV because I had watched this video prior to playing it. Oh, I'd have to look at the VODs again.
Before we can think about what any of this means, a ghostly apparition breaks through one of the fleshy walls. Dark blood spews forth as the spirit overtakes the protagonist. As we fade up from black, we find ourselves in the same apartment now looking normal. Henry Townsend, a completely average man who has a knack for photography, has been trapped in his seemingly normal apartment for the past 5 days. An ominous set of chains lock him inside. The windows don't open, and his only connections to the outside world are through the peephole of his front door and a carved-out hole in the wall that vaguely links him to his neighbor, Eileen Galvin. The most notable thing about being in Henry's apartment is that we see it through his eyes. The ominous first-person camera shows us the horror and the utter mundanity of Henry's deluxe abode, while also faintly covering us in a weighted blanket of unease. Henry's apartment is...
I'm going to be honest, the scariest thing about this is the fact that... Henry can afford an apartment by himself as just a single dude in his, late 20s. That's the scariest thing about this, right? I mean, have you seen rent prices nowadays? It's like when you look at an old game and you see, like, gas is, like, sub $2, or, like, you know, something is, 99 cents, and you're just like, wow, man, that's the scariest thing about this game. When the reality crosses over into fiction, you're like, you know what? I might put up with a spooky, ghost-infested house at this point if rent is actually cheap enough.
Painfully normal. His walls are decorated with photos he's taken, some being captures of landmarks around the calming resort town of Silent Hill. His fridge, almost completely empty, houses a bottle of wine and some chocolate milk. Clearly, in his 5 days of forced isolation, Henry seems to have consumed all food besides these 2 items.
Honestly, though, I feel that, dude. If I was Silent Hill 4 The Roomed, oh, dude, I would eat all the ramen in 2 days. All of it, just gone. I would very steadily go through everything systematically. It would be very impressive what I would consume over the course of these 5 days.
Examining the large photo above the couch, we learn that the apartment's superintendent, Frank Sunderland, gifted this to Henry. You heard that right. Frank Sunderland. Father to the one and only wife guy, James Sunderland.
This makes me wonder what the actual... I mean, because it makes me wonder what the continuity of Silent Hill 2 would be, right? Obviously, the good ending is when, James is able to overcome his traumas and be able to escape with, forgetting her name, Laura, I think, question mark. But I guess not knowing which is canon, because there's multiple endings, right? Not knowing what's canon is actually even more powerful. I don't know, because he's kind of that. I guess this kind of feeds into, I think it's, which one's not Downpour? Homecoming, right? Where lawyer what's her face says, this town, nobody ever leaves, right? So very much an insular community, right? I don't know. Makes you wonder what happened to James after 2, but I think that's part of the magic of it, is we don't really know what happens to James after 2.
Before you ask, Yes, Frank can also be a total weirdo, as you'll see. He also isn't the only odd character in this apartment complex. Henry happens to be quite passive, to an almost lifeless degree. He only expresses true discomfort a handful of times, audibly shouting out for help to Eileen, or whenever someone inquires about his recent disappearance. Henry is a mystery that needs proper examination, and I'm happy to say that I think I've finally figured out the mystery behind his personality.
He's just John Silent Hill. He's just milquetoast Ethan Winters. Like, he's just a dude.
Or lack thereof. To really explain the message of SH4, I have to tell you about Henry's first adventure through hell. So let's dive in. After finding ourselves thoroughly trapped, we discover an old note wedged behind a shelf. The memo describes the ritual of the Holy Assumption, a ritual resulting in the creation of a realm hidden between worlds. A place that shifts and torments the souls trapped within. It's said that one man has control of this world, but the rest of the memo is too damaged to read. A shifting world inhabited by nightmare creatures designed to torture lost souls? Sounds like Silent Hill's Otherworld to me. Like clockwork, a loud crash is heard in the bathroom. Henry uncovers a newly opened hole in the wall. Strange sounds echo deep within this dark canal, and with nowhere else to go, Henry crawls inside. Slowly skulking through the tunnel, we're birthed into a familiar yet impossible world. Henry awakens in a strange series of hallways and train platforms. This very true-to-life train station inhabits one other living being, a woman that we saw earlier through Henry's window entering the nearby subway station.
Who are you? What's your name?
Henry. And you?
I feel like a remake or a remaster and the redubbing of the voices would do this game a disservice. Sometimes the wooden dialogue it hits just right. Like, it's perfect.
This is my dream, and you don't even know my name.
This is Cynthia, and she's plainly aware that she's trapped in a Silent Hill-esque otherworld. She fully acknowledges her imprisonment in this dream and promises Henry a good time if he can free her from this spiritual cage. For a short while, the seductive Cynthia tags along, but doesn't make it too far before illness befalls her.
I think I'm gonna puke.
As Henry politely waits for the distressed woman, a pair of vile dogs burst out from the restroom. The combat in Silent Hill 4 is interesting, to say the least. True to Team Silent's more action-oriented vision, Henry is the most agile protagonist the series has seen up to this point. Quick steps, light and heavy attacks, and a new charged-up swing accompany every weapon you bash away with. You still lock on and strafe around enemies, but everything feels a lot more fluid due to the game's pure analog control. Repositioning the camera with L1 is still a thing, and resources are especially limited. This time around, you no longer have an infinite inventory. Instead, Henry's apartment houses a Resident Evil-inspired item box where you can store and retrieve whatever you pick up in the other world. This might seem like a drag mechanically, but the devs mitigate this potential stress by including a ton of homeward holes. What can I say? Henry just loves holes.
Any hole's a goal. Wonderful.
The environments are less expansive than they were in previous entries. Backtracking isn't a total pace breaker, and after doing a ton of high-octane melee combat, returning home actually feels good. It also helps that simply standing in Henry's apartment heals him. So for me, venturing into the other world was like going on a late-night grocery store run, grabbing up every healing item I could and banking them at home. Chilling out for a few seconds, watching Henry's HP recover itself always felt comforting. It's the same feeling I'd get stumbling into a newly discovered safe room in a Resident Evil game. It's a genuinely interesting way of presenting the typical survival horror save room that I believe actually strengthens the narrative theming of SH4, but we'll talk about that later.
I mean, I guess hypothetically, it's not like his wounds are regenerating, a la Ethan Winters, right? Just reattaching his arm, right? I guess maybe there could be the argument that this is like his sanity, right? His sanity hits low enough, he just collapses in the other world, and obviously it has actual consequences. I don't know. I think it's a stretch, right? But I mean, you could reasonably look at the room being comforting and the room being a place of solace, regenerating. Henry's HP, in some such light, right? It's not like his wounds are knitting back together, right? But you 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 expire in the other world. You expire in real life, as we find out. So I could see some interesting parallels for that. Although it's not expressly, it's expressly intuited as actual health rather than any sort of sanity meter.
Fluidity and accessibility of SH4's combat allows pretty much anyone through the front door. It's mastering this new flow of combat which empowers players to engage with the title's combat minutia. There is actual combat tech in SH4 that getting the hang of results in genuinely fun moments. Henry's charged up melee strikes, for example, actually give him invincibility frames, making enemy takedowns feel especially good with proper timing. Guns
Bro, Pickaxe of Despair, too good.
aren't as much of a thing in this game. There are only 2 types of handguns with limited ammo, best used on the more challenging encounters. You'll mostly be whapping the otherworldly imps trying to get in your way. The variety of enemies is what you'd expect from Silent Hill, and are a welcome challenge to this more action-packed adventure.
I think I played on easy, because I heard apparently this is like the hardest Silent Hill game, at least in the originals. So I don't know. I just played on easy because I just wanted to like experience the game, if that makes sense. I think the only time I actually used handgun ammo, I'm pretty sure, was the pack of twin victims that block you on the backtrack through the water world. Because I did not want to deal with that to get Eileen just absolutely battered. And then the other time I used ammo was Walter, so I was absolutely packed with ammo.
Where things start getting serious is when the ghosts show up.
No, actually, I think the Ghost of Richard Braintree as well, because that one's kind of a pain, but I don't remember offhand.
SH4's Japanese occult-styled ghosts are some of the scariest enemies I've ever experienced in a horror game. These guys are genuinely invincible and have no fear getting right up in Henry's face. Between their persistence and disturbing audio-visual presentation, I can't stand being in a room with one of these things for too long. When one of these apparitions gets too close is where you finally hear the classic SH radio static. It's almost as if the game is saying, yeah, these are the real monsters of this Silent Hill game. While you can down these guys, they won't stay there for long. Permanently taking them out requires specific, limited endgame items. At the cost of making possibly the easiest to control Silent Hill game, a very noticeable drop in visual animation quality is present. Just looking at SH4 compared to 3, and the disparity in the level of detail is obvious. With the constant reuse of unaltered stock sound effects,
I mean, honestly, though, it kind of added to the game for me, though. It was honestly kind of funny.
and Henry's jittery, free analog movement, it's almost hard to believe that this game takes place in the same series as SH3. By the way, this is probably my only real annoyance when it comes to this title. The evident and persistent feeling of low-budget production haunts SH4's gameplay. As we progress, that vibe will rear its ugly head in other areas of design, but again, we'll talk about all of that later. Getting back to the accursed subway station, we can't find any way forward, so we head home. In the apartment, a note is slipped under the door. Mom, why don't you wake up? Another message hidden behind a cabinet expresses the fear that this room might be trapped in an alternate dimension. Judging by the state of this message, it's been here longer than Henry has. It also reads, Eileen never noticed. Looking through the hole, we see our friendly neighbor sitting around, not noticing us. Checking the front door peephole regularly will reveal a lot of extra story regarding your neighbors.
Help me! Help! Let me out of here!
There's something going on in this room.
What do you mean?
I heard weird noises coming from inside there.
Help!
Hey, Richard, can you see anything from your window?
No. Everything looks pretty normal to me.
Why so defensive, Richard?
The guy who lives here, what's he like anyway?
I know his name and face, but that's about it.
Well, I'm gonna go call the super.
Yeah, good idea.
Damn it. They can't hear me.
As the phone rings, we hear Cynthia desperately urging Henry to come back to the station. As we crawl back into the dream, we find the seductress trapped once again by a pair of ghosts. Navigating a claustrophobic series of connected train cars eventually leads us to the platform's exit.
If I remember correctly, I think the ghosts actually ignore her, which is an interesting detail. I don't know if that's necessarily a game balancing reason or if it's because she's the target of, the big bad.
Strangely enough, Cynthia disappears again. As we crawl deeper into the station, the all too familiar metal-grated and flesh-covered scenery makes its grand return. This time a lot more fleshy than Alessa's rust and blood-covered nightmare. Ghosts, hellhounds, and a massive umbilical cord-like tube block our progress. The stress rises as we hear Cynthia begging us to get back to the turnstiles. A rather lengthy escalator ride stands between us and Henry getting lucky. This is another part of SH4's design that genuinely sucks. The wallmen will rock you down the stairs with a single hit, making for one of the most tedious moments in the series.
I feel like this could be done right. The problem here is that it just becomes annoying, especially on the backtrack with Eileen. You risk just so much. Sorry, allergies. Woo! Sorry, they're hitting really bad today. Sorry about that. It's just, especially because you have to really keep Eileen in tip-top shape, it just becomes an annoyance, honestly.
With enough patience and careful movement, we find Cynthia. Her belongings are scattered on the ground with traces of blood everywhere. On the door of the ticketing booth, a crest can be removed. The temptation placard unlocks this door. Inside, we find a beaten and bloodied Cynthia.
Are you okay?
It's just a dream, right?
With the horror on display, Henry barely reacts. He reassures the dying woman that this is just a dream. In Cynthia's final moments, we see the numbers 16 out of 21 carved into her chest.
I feel like if you're going through a retrospective, and this is kind of a small critique, I feel like you do it as it's presented in the game. So what? 16121, right? I feel keeping that around, or I feel like explaining as the game presents it till the reveal is probably the better thing to do personally, because it knowing that information, knowing what the numbers represent, changes your entire view of the story. But that's just me personally. That's just a small. That's a me personal thing.
Cynthia dies, and Henry wakes up back at home. That was just a dream, wasn't it? A fantasy from an inquisitive and creative mind, right? Checking the window, we see an ambulance parked at the train station. Henry wonders if it's for Cynthia, but it must be a coincidence, right? Leaving the bedroom, the door is still chained shut. The radio is blasting as two men narrate the scene of a crime. Mention of numbers carved into someone perk up the ear. Checking the foot of the front door, a red sheet of paper awaits. Reading, although the cult itself is gone, I'm sure the spirit of it is still alive.
So, I'm sure police broadcasts aren't public like this, right? I'm sure that, they're on specific channels and stuff, right? This honestly kind of feeds into the receiver of wisdom bit, right? About Henry being, number 21, the receiver of wisdom, right? And that's actually what leads people to talk about the twin victims when the twin victims point at him, kind of designating him, or at least implying that he is the receiver of wisdom, right? Before just absolutely trying to clap him, right? Because it gives the player insight as to there being actual consequences and, helps with the flow of the story, yes. But at the same time, I think there could be a solid argument for Henry having access, or I guess being given access to what I would assume are secure channels like this. It feeds into that whole plot point of him being the receiver of wisdom, right? At least that's my uneducated take on it personally.
There are too many strange things happening in that town. I'm investigating 2 people, or maybe just 1. I've just about discovered what's going on. The author of these cryptic red letters is an unknown, but sounds like they're looking for trouble wanting to explore Silent Hill's cultish horrors. Crawling back into the hole, Henry awakens in another dream. This time it's the forests neighboring the town of Silent Hill. Deep in these dark woods, we find an abandoned car. The engine's still running, and a diary is found on the driver's seat. The record belongs to one Jasper Geen, a Silent Hill cult fanboy, and literally Spud from Trainspotting. Jasper's diary reads that it's been a while since he visited Silent Hill, and that he hopes to meet the devil this time. Reading further, Jasper mentions a nosy guy always showing up whenever he ventures to interesting spots like Silent Hill. Jasper recalling the nosy man telling him that his home is the orphanage in the middle of the northwest and southeast of the Toluca Lake region. You might think that statement would refer to the nosy man himself, but the labeling of nosy man would likely suggest this to be a fellow investigator like Jasper. So who are they talking about? This playful dreamlike fantasy is on the shorter side as we find Jasper seated in the outskirts of the forest next to a massive stone. The awkward occult fan mentions something about Silent Hill's cult apparently using these ancient stones to communicate with the world of the dead.
Yeah, I think these stones are like mentioned and like you like hear about the stones, but I don't think there's anything other than like surface level world building.
Or so he's heard. Just down the way we find the Silent Hill Smile Support Society, or Wish House Orphanage. I didn't mention this in my SH3 documentary because I wanted to save it for this video, but we actually learn about this orphanage in that game. During Heather's trip to the hospital, we can find a magazine article written by one Joseph Schreiber. The article documents the kidnapping and indoctrination of children to join the cult.
That's actually really interesting. It's like how we hear about Walter Sullivan. I think we see Walter Sullivan's grave, if I remember correctly, in Silent Hill 2 as well. But the twin victims are his victims that are referenced in Silent Hill 2. I love the interconnectivity here.
Jasper mentions something similar if you continue to hang around with him. What's interesting is in the limited amount of files we've already found, they read like Joseph's writing from the article. So the nosy guy is most likely Joseph, but also probably the author of the red memos that we receive back home. It seems like we aren't the only otherworldly investigator who's ventured through these multiple other worlds. By the way, Silent Hill's cult is officially referred to as The Order, so I'll be calling it that from now on. Reaching the center of the woods, we find the Wish House. And of course, it's locked. The building and surrounding area look relatively untouched by the darkness of Silent Hill's nightmarish presence that is most definitely present in the other parts of the woods. Nearby, we can find the one and only Toluca Lake. Looking at it from the other side still feels as ominous as it did in James's journey through hell. I hope you got a good look over there, because that's all the Silent Hill we get in this story. Eventually, we find a young boy and Jasper again. The boy might be one of the Wish House's victims, judging by his confused abandonment in this forest. Jasper's rambling about something big about to happen as the two take off. Finding Jasper
is just Jasper's a character. I'm sad we glossed over the trowel bit and the milk bit, but I think for this review, I think it makes sense. And the drinking the milk, just SFX is just it's peak. It's so good.
We're at the orphanage. We need to get him some chocolate milk.
Chocolate?
Yes.
Oh, no,
he
we're
literally begs Henry for his only bottle back home. Once you do this, we get the key, and getting inside reveals some peculiar SH history.
I mean, considering he only had, the bottle of wine left, as well as the chocolate milk, you could argue maybe that Henry is being, just kind of a good Samaritan, a pretty good guy, is willing to... out of what little he has left, still willing to give others from his own pocket, whatever. I don't know. I'm sure you could make some sort of charitable argument from this. But then again, I could also be reaching.
A scribbled note on the floor reads, "Have you found Alessa yet? How is Walter's progress coming along? Send me a report." I bet you never guessed we'd be finding a note from Claudia looking for Heather, huh? The state of the orphanage is dire. No one's been here for a long time. With this place being a somewhat prison camp for kids, it's very possible that Henry and Jasper have been roped into the child from earlier's dream of living here. It's also probably safe to say that this kid is Walter. We know the Order started all of this with Alessa, and Claudia as a child would carry the cult's mission forward after Dahlia's death. But a third alternative being present? Well, that just seems devilish. Speaking of... I guess Jasper ended up seeing the devil after all as he burns to a crisp. The numbers 17 out of 21 are carved into Jasper's flesh, and Henry has nothing to say about it. Waking up once again, we hear a radio broadcast mentioning the fiery death of a man in the woods outside of Silent Hill. The news brief mentions this incident feeling similar to that of a series of killings tied to the Walter Sullivan case 10 years prior. If you remember, in Silent Hill 2, we can find an article literally in the trash talking about a murder of twins, Billy and Miriam Locane. These children were killed by a man named Walter Sullivan, who after his arrest took his own life in his jail cell. Walter, carving numbers into each of his victims, created a calling card and dark reputation for himself. It's beginning to look like the dreams Henry's having are tied to more realities than just his own. It's ironic, given the name of the placard on the locked door to Jasper's flaming death, The Source. Something Jasper wanted so dearly to find in Silent Hill, and ended up just like poor Alessa, burning as the source of all of these Silent Hill-related nightmares.
So I think I've watched like a single Silent Hill 1 video, so I actually forgot that's what happened to Alessa.
The doorbell rings. Frank is there calling out to Henry. Henry responds. Frank can't hear him. Frank tries unlocking the door. The chains repel the attempt. Checking on Eileen, she's enjoying some TV time when, all of a sudden, she looks right at us. For a fleeting moment, Eileen can actually feel Henry's presence, his desperate isolation. She can sense something's wrong in her neighbor's apartment, but like Frank, every attempt that's made is rejected. Henry isn't coming out, and for the time being, no one's coming in. Looking out of the window, we see a familiar face.
Wow! Everything looks so small
I missed this one.
over here! This is amazing! Hey, I think I see my house! Wait, how do I get down from here? Hey, somebody, throw me a rope!
You know, I actually looked up how much it would cost to get a custom hot air balloon made. Let's just say, unless I hit the Mega Millions in South Ashfield, I am not doing a Robbie the Rabbit hot air balloon bit for any of these videos anytime soon.
That's when you get a generous benefactor that just actually makes it happen. Because people have that amount of money now.
With nowhere to go, it's back to the hole. And this time, it's gotten larger. The sound of children's voices can be heard on the other side. The next dream is more of a nightmare, as Henry awakens in the Water Tower prison, a giant, secluded pillar hidden on Toluca Lake. This cylindrical prison was once a real type of water treatment plant that you could find in our real world.
Oh,
this
neat.
ominous place is now an abandoned detention center, saved exclusively for the unwilling children who lived at Wish House. The prison otherworld is the beginning of SH4's true undeniable horrors. This place is a prison for kids. All throughout your investigation, you'll find countless small, disgusting cells, some of which the previous occupants have documented their psychotic mistreatment. I don't want to read any of the files found here because they genuinely upset me.
Yeah.
Innocent children are kidnapped, transferred here, and tortured until they're willing to join the order, a lot of which didn't make it out alive, seemingly. Spend enough time in a cell, and you'll see someone walk by the cell's observation hole. The pure suffering of the prison is just the beginning, but the constant gray dreariness of this place, coupled with its afternoon foggy weather outside, create a genuine sense of entrapment. This is the first place we visit that always makes me feel like there
That point, yeah.
isn't a way out. We're stranded here, locked in.
If anything, the twin victims didn't actually... Yeah, because they fled on this one. I mean, this feeds into the receiver wisdom bit as well, right?
Weather outside create a genuine sense of entrapment. This is the first place we visit that always makes me feel like there isn't a way out. We're stranded here, locked in, lost at sea in the miasma of another's nightmare. The only other human we find here is one of the Order's prison guards, a man named Andrew DeSalvo. According to legend, this guy wasn't a true believer of the cults, but also didn't have any issue abusing any of the prison's inmates during the Order's reign in the real world. Him being locked up feels like karmic justice to whoever this dream world belongs to. If the files and evidence of the multiple abuses is anything to go off of, DeSalvo is a weak scumbag who is now currently being treated as he did his victims. Exploring this impossibly large prison puts you in the shoes of the kids who were held here. So much of the traversal requires tedious backtracking up and down the massive structure. You truly feel tiny in this place. One hallway is an optical illusion, where one end of the room looks and feels normal, while the opposite is massive. The door at the end is too big for Henry to open, putting you on the same level as an oppressed child, trapped, unable to escape a cursed fate.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now that they bring it up, because yeah, that makes a lot of sense on why the door is so large, but then it's normal size and you can fit through it on the backtrack, especially when it's Eileen, because you're not being seen as a child at that point. That's really interesting. I also think that it's interesting that he's in the cell, and we brought this up in the other reaction we did to Totally Pointless TV's video, where it's interesting that like he can see through the bars and even kind of reach through the bars, but I guess can't see Henry at certain points, which kind of contradicts, like, because like in the Cynthia bit, right? Like they're experiencing the same shared dream, right? They're experiencing the same shared otherworld instance, so to speak. But it also seems like they're able to experience different things, where obviously like Cynthia gets sick and then, you know, she ends up disappearing from that restroom, and then she ends up being seen in a train car, and then you go through a door and then she disappears and then she's at the turnstiles, right? So like, I guess you can experience the same instance, but you still can see and experience different things within that instance. So the consistency there kind of throws me off a little bit. Just, I guess it leads to like this more mysticism kind of angle, where, because I mean, like Silent Hill 2 is a perfect example of this, right? Where you have Eddie, who's experiencing completely different things than Laura is experiencing completely different things than James, right? James and Maria kind of experience and see the same things, right? They're kind of tied to each other's like instance. And then there's like, you know, nexus points where like, you know, James ends up coming across Eddie, and then they have their whole thing. You know, they have their whole conversation thing. Eddie and Laura end up popping together, and Eddie's just eating, you know, stuff in his face with pizza. Relatable mood, honestly. And, you know, then they kind of go their separate ways, but they do experience different things. And I guess this is also backed up by the point in Silent Hill 3 where, what's his face? Claudia's like right-hand man, right? When, oh my God, it's Heather, right? Where Heather talks about, you know, seeing monsters, and he kind of just laughs and scoffs, and he's like, monsters? You see them as monsters? Which I guess is also further backed up, because in Silent Hill 2, the first enemy you fight as James, I guess there's a police line next to it, at least in the original, right? So perception gets really distorted going into Silent Hill, and I think that's what makes it fascinating. But we also don't need like Warhammer 40 decree, this is what the Terminus decree is. We don't need it explained. I feel if we got a true explanation, it makes the end result lesser. Hi, looks like we got some new people in chat today. Hi. We have a long day ahead of us.
One of the only real puzzles present in SH4 is rotating each of the tower's floors to align 3 holes that lead down into the prison's depths. Aligning the tower perfectly unlocks all cells, leading Andrew to escape. When we find him again, he's accompanied by the little boy from before. He's begging the child to let him go, but the kid walks away. Henry, finally speaking up, asks who that kid is, and Andrew responds, Walter Sullivan. Considering what we know about Walter already, it wouldn't be a stretch to say we've been playing through some of the worst formative moments of his life.
I guess you could also view that moment as turning your back and not offering your abuser forgiveness, right? I guess you could view that in a way as Walter exerting power over those that did him wrong. You could maybe make an excuse for that.
Finding DeSalvo again, he's been murdered. 18 out of 21 is carved into his body. Speechless as always, Henry wakes up, back at home. This return home isn't as eventful as no one seems to be around. Heading into the hole, Henry awakens in a distorted, jumbled city environment. This time, the nightmare is painting a hellish picture of the outside world, a terrible place that no one should ever call home. The sounds of demonic animals shout in the distance. A dirge of gunfire follows. Cars pile on the rooftops, while familiar signage adorns the buildings we explore. It sounds like a war zone on these streets.
Ouch! Damn it.
I think this is one of the most unhinged and stupidest cutscenes Team Silent have ever made.
No, it was peak. This dude falls from the sky. Ouch. You know what? I usually fall from multi-story buildings. You know, it's usually with a gentle thump and a little bit of an ouch. It's so good. It definitely leans into the dream sequence-like nature of the game, though.
It's supposed to be a dream world, but it's just hilarious seeing this middle-aged guy fall out of the sky, slam into the pavement, and in the same frame, recover like that didn't just happen. He even says, ouch, like he stubbed his toe or something. This man is named, and I'm not making this up, Richard Braintree. This guy is actually one of Henry's neighbors, and we can see him earlier in the game through the peephole. Despite his standoffish nature, he is one of the more friendly neighbors to the apartment complex's community. Richard also sheds some light on the situation. It appears that Richard also came here through a hole in his apartment wall. He wonders if the previous tenant of Henry's room also ended up here, seeing as he just disappeared one day. The previous tenant being a journalist who went insane and shut himself inside, refusing to leave his room. Richard takes off as we're left to explore the concrete jungle. The Otherworld city shows us more of Henry's neighborhood. We get to explore a few shops, alleyways, and street corners. Notably, every single one of these places happens to be located on a rooftop, isolating us from the outside or grounded world in this case. A consistent theme across every location we've been stuck in so far. If we return home, we can catch a glimpse of a concerned Eileen asking Frank about Henry's impenetrable apartment. Frank tells Eileen that this isn't the first time something like this has happened. It's even happened before room 302's previous inhabitant. Frank—
You know, this is one of those things that's actually believable, because how many of y'all actually have dealt with, you know, a landlord who, like, maybe for like 6 months, 2 to 6 months, you tell him, hey, this thing's broken, hey, I need to get it fixed, right? Because, you know, let's be real, how many of us actually rent, right? Because, you know, something housing prices, something regardless, way into the weeds. However, this is honestly one of the most believable things that I could honestly, like, see happening is, like, you know, I mean, their rent's not a problem. Like there's the town of Silent Hill, the spirits or whatever, are just for some reason, like, either paying or in some way, shape, or form making it so they don't have to worry about the tenant actually giving up rent, right? And just see the this is an occurrence that just happens sometimes. You know, the house or the apartment is just, you know, haunted by some old mumbo jumbo ghost. I'm sure it's fine. He just lets it happen, right? On the apartment thing, yeah, just 2 to 6 months. Hey, this thing doesn't work, and then, you know, they're just like, oh, we'll get around to it, and they never actually send the guy out, or they send a guy. They finally get a hold of a guy, and then they send him out, and then, like, you know, it takes another, you know, 3 to 4 months for anything to happen, right? I mean, this is. I feel it's meant to be as kind of a joke commentary, but at the same time, this ages really well.
Frank then decides to tell Eileen that he has an umbilical cord in a box at home.
There are a lot of strange things in this world. The umbilical cord I keep in a box in my room. Lately,
The what?
It started to smell terrible.
As it turns out, biomass just rots after a certain period of time, my guy. Probably not healthy. Probably not even legal.
Huh?
Uh-huh.
Umbilical cord?
Like, does insane social awkwardness just run in this family? Back in the nightmare, we see Richard confronting a young Walter. He questions the boy about the nature of the dream world, mentioning that Walter looks like a kid that he caught snooping around the apartment building. Walter runs off as Richard chases after him. Stranger danger. What really bugs me about the city Otherworld is that I feel like I've known places like this. As a developing city kid, one of the coolest pieces of escapism that Silent Hill always gave me was being able to explore a horror-themed Pacific Northwest. In a lot of ways, playing Silent Hill games was like exploring a foreign world. Silent Hill 3's glimpses into city life were oddly comforting, probably because Heather is just so badass. But Henry's romp through this overly rusted out and discarded idea of city life is genuinely frightening to me.
You know, why don't... It's weird, because we want to talk about, like, powerful women in gaming, which is great. But I never hear, like, Ada Wong get brought up. I never hear Sheva Alomar get brought up. I never hear Heather from Silent Hill 3 get brought up. Like, I guess what? We talk about What's-Her-Face from her... I haven't played Horizon, so I don't know what the main character's name is, if I'm being honest, right? I mean, Cat from Halo is a good one we talk about. Even then, I feel Cat from Halo doesn't get talked about enough. I guess I'm like really confused because like we want to talk about how gaming needs more like iconic, like, you know, women and strong, empowered women. And I'm cool with that. I think most people are cool with that. But when we get strong, empowered women, we don't talk about it. So like, did I miss a memo somewhere? Am I just did I miss an update? Did I miss patch notes?
This place isn't blood-covered like Alessa's nightmare. It just looks like what happens to a place when everyone stops caring, when no one wants to go outside anymore. SH4 is one of the only games where I want to leave its locations as fast as humanly possible. If you grew up in a major city, you've undeniably visited its less good neighborhoods. Pockets of worn-down storefronts, fully rusted through chain link and metal plating, hiding condemned buildings underneath. The exteriors of this other world are just that all the time. Taking shelter inside, you're always greeted with a seedy or destroyed snapshot of something that used to be very normal. It's the extreme decay and utter indifference of this building world that Henry's forced to survive in that really scares me. Eventually, we find a door with another placard on it. The words chaos are carved into it. Heading inside, we find Richard in an electric chair. Young Walter at the controls fries this abrasive man until he stops moving. You know the drill by now. We wake up at home, and this time Eileen is getting ready for a party. Going back through the hole, we emerge in a more traditional Silent Hill 1 looking version of this very apartment. A man in a long coat is seen knocking at Eileen's door.
Don't do it. Don't answer it. It's not worth it.
Before we get a good look at him, he walks off, unfazed by the fleshy nightmare surrounding us. Young Walter is also knocking at Henry's door, but he fades away as we get closer.
Notice that Henry's door is also the only section that's kind of like not really touched by the corruption of the other world. Very good touch.
Interesting coincidence, having two suspicious people vanish before our eyes. Exploring the apartment is actually exploring this entire 3-story building. It's one of the most detailed apartment levels in any game I've played. We get to invade the homes of each person who lives here, and all of their living spaces paint vivid pictures of the souls that inhabit each unit.
I thought it was cool. Like, yeah, like there was the dude with like the gun wall, which was super cool. The phone section just sucked. Like that hurt.
Say a lot happens in the apartment would be an extraordinary understatement, so I'll focus on what I feel best represents SH4's narrative theming. One of the standout apartment happenings revolves around Richard, a man named Mike, and a woman named Rachel. Mike is the resident of room 301, the apartment right next to Henry's. This smut-obsessed dude had been creeping on a girl named Rachel for a while. Rachel, a nurse who works at a local care center, St. Jerome's Hospital, is already in a committed relationship despite what some in the apartment think about her and Mike. If you check the community mailboxes, you'll find Rachel's overflowing with love letters from this curious man. Everyone in the building had taken notice of this guy's persistence, but one resident was not having any of it. During an uneventful afternoon, Mike, stalking Rachel's hall, would stumble into Richard. The two men, bumping shoulders, passing by each other. A seemingly innocent mistake on Mike's part, but an excuse for Richard to serve up some street justice. Having full awareness of the situation, the high-strung Richard drags Mike to his apartment and beats the ever-loving shit out of him. Rachel was present for the beatdown, and so was a curious young boy. Walter Sullivan, having only caught a glimpse of the scuffle, saw the ripped up and disposed of bloody clothing of Mike's laying on the hallway floor. As Richard exits his room, he spots the lonely child, scolding him for snooping around in affairs that didn't concern him.
How do you like that?
I actually really didn't. Yeah, I totally missed this. I definitely blitzed the apartment section because you get to the phone bit. Chat had to actually point out which room it was just because the section it was annoying. I actually didn't know this little bit of backstory. That's actually really cool. Which also is like, morally, what's the correct thing to do here, right? On one hand, the dude is like actively like harassing her, right? Like actually like being a genuine POS, right? Like, don't harass people. Come on. Like sure, being infatuated with somebody is fine, but this is harassment, right? On the other hand, technically Richard is in the wrong because he did, dish out some good old vigilante justice. So it's one of those where, like, on one hand, yeah, he prevented the issue from escalating, but then again, like, something, right? Red flag law logic, where, like, do you persecute and prosecute based on what could happen, or do you have to wait for something to actually happen? And this is what you actually run into, where, like, let's say your neighbor has, an aggressive dog, right? Like, this dog does not shut up, right? There's not much you can do, especially if you live in, like, a subdivision HOA, right? Like, what are you going to do, right? Like, as somebody who's been kind of part of a situation like that, where this dog just would not shut up because the owner's just, I don't know, is weird. I mean, they can just say, what? Whoever comes over, wags finger, makes, because they're not really doing anything wrong. The dog's being a dog. Simple as. Whether the owner is being good, whether the owner is being bad, whether the owner is being neglectful, whether the dog just, is just trained in a certain way, and that's just dog doing dog things, right? Like, even if the dog is, like, aggressive, like, the dog is very much, like, aggressive in demeanor, until the dog unfortunately bites someone, there's nothing you can really do, right? So Richard is, for all intents and purposes, in the wrong here as well, at least morally and ethically, because he did dish out his own justice rather than going through the proper channels. But then again, once again, counterpoint of, like, will the proper channels actually do anything? Or, especially it being a guy harassing a woman, right? Is it going to be seen as, oh, you know how guys are, right? Guys will be guys, which, oh, dude, I hate that excuse so much. I have so much disdain for that. Yeah, but it's interesting to see this from Walter's perspective as well, especially as a kid, where he doesn't really know what's going on. He just kind of sees adult aggression, which actually kind of leads into this specific, the apartments, their other world, it being so chaotic and full of animal noises and gunshots and stuff, right? Very, just traumatic stuff in a lot of ways, right? So it does feed into the locale, and it makes a lot of sense in my opinion.
That, you sick little freak. You had it coming to you. These clothes are disgusting. Get them out of my sight.
I know. It'll be perfect to wrap his body in.
Hold it.
You!
Hold it, I think
You snooping around again?
Myself.
Get your ass out of here before you really piss me off!
Hold it. Hold it. I think I'll keep that one for myself. Hold it. I think I'll keep that one for myself.
Man's got a concussion.
Walter must have thought Richard literally murdered this man, with his previous decision of punishing Braintree coming into clearer focus. Richard taking matters into his own hands can be seen as a good thing. He was standing up for a defenseless woman. He taught this creep a lesson he'd never forget, but what he did was undeniably horrifying.
You could also argue that his end is very similar to what's his face being powerless and kind of restrained and being kind of assaulted, right? I could see parallels here.
Someone so easily prone to violence like this calls into question his true motives. From what we experienced, Richard seemed to fly off the handle a little too easily compared to the other denizens of this dream. It's very easy to understand why this kid would think of Richard as a villain. The apartment does a great job at illustrating the subtle horror of having to be around a diverse group of personalities. Some people are sweet like Eileen and Rachel, some are weird like Frank, and some will come off questionable just like Mike and Richard.
Ah, you mean just like any other neighbor situation, you have your weird neighbor. I had a weird neighbor who, like, my roommates were just like, have you ever considered how he has certain things, like how he has an expensive drone? I guess the insinuation was maybe that he got it through less than savory means or something. I don't know. Point being, we have those neighbors. If anything, this is incredibly realistic. I mean, just a bunch of different people all in each other's, localized area.
It's enough to make a man want to stay inside permanently. Returning to Henry's room, we can see Eileen pacing back and forth, likely creeped out from the surprise door knocking from earlier. She's dressed to the nines and almost ready to head out. Looking through Henry's bedroom, we find a key with a small doll attached to it. Exploring the building, we come across the trenchcoat man. He's sitting peacefully on a rusted staircase. In his hand, he's holding a shabby old doll.
I got this from Miss Galvin. A long, long time ago. She was younger than me back then. She looked so happy, holding her mother's hand. Here. I'll give it to you.
The wording, "she was younger than me back then," would suggest that she is now older than him. As we finish rummaging through everyone's stuff, we return to the 3rd floor where Eileen can be heard screaming. The doll key actually opens her front door, but things don't look too good.
Hey, kid. Thanks. Did you find your mommy? This place? It's dangerous. You need to... Hurry. Get out of here.
Do we know what Walter's method of game ending is? I don't think we do. Like, we kind of just see, like, vague, you know, beaten, battered, bruised. You assume, you know, intense physical violence, right? I mean, even with the ghosts, right? You know, where they want to get close, and, you know, but they kind of, like, stick their hand, you know, through your chest kind of thing, right? Or gnaw on you. Like, I don't know if we actually... All right, like, so I've never heard anyone talk about Walter's actual, like, method, right? But he's also shown in the other world, like, he has chainsaws, he has a, you know, he's got a handgun, he's got, I don't know what he dual wields. I think he has some sort of automatic stuff, right? Or some sort of automatic platform, right? Like, he's versatile in the other world, but I don't know if we've ever really, like, how did this happen to... And he also has to have at least something sharp on him, right? In order to carve out the numbers, right? I think I'm applying way too much logic to this.
Eileen, more concerned with Walter's safety, seemingly dies in front of the child. Henry, for the first time in the game, reacts. He drops to his knees. His only connection, the only person who looked at him, who saw him through the otherworldly hole in the wall, has died. Waking up in Henry's bedroom, night has fallen.
I guess that makes a lot of sense, because I always thought it was a little weird how expedited Henry fell for Eileen. But this makes a lot of sense, right? Because I guess I missed the part where she stared at him and like was able to recognize his presence. No, I can see that. I would argue that's kind of a trauma bond, though, right? Which, you know, trauma bonds don't necessarily make good foundations for relationships. I'm sure they can, but, you know, is it necessarily healthy? Has the potential to go south really quick.
Through the window, all of the people that we could see previously living their lives are gone. Eileen isn't in her home, and no one's out in the hall. Another red slip lays at our feet. Joseph mentions being terrified of someone. He can't hold out anymore and seals off the storage room. Checking said room, a new piece of writing is found carved into the wall, describing the creator of the other worlds we've been trapped in. This grand dimension has its limits, and one of its weaknesses is the creator's mother. She's apparently located at the heart of the nightmare. If we return to check on Eileen, Henry's guilt begins to set in as we hear two police officers in her room assessing the situation. Eileen's Robbie doll is looking directly at us and pointing, almost as if to say,
"You couldn't save her! Just stay in that room and wait to expire!"
I mean, I feel like also, obviously, receiver wisdom as well, so I feel that there's multiple things that this signifies. It is a very good touch, though. It is a very good touch and definitely points to Henry being you're next, you couldn't save her, you are the receiver of wisdom. Like, there's so many things that you could bundle up into that single interaction.
The original bathroom hole is sealed up, so using each of the placards found at each murder scene, we open a new hole in the storage room wall. This hole leads us to a derelict version of St. Jerome's Hospital. Right away, we see Coat Guy violently dissecting a woman's body. Noticing Henry, the man approaches like an animal about to pounce. But
I noticed that it's really weird though, because like you leave the room and you come back in and he's kind of just gone. So I think that kind of eliminates some of the tension if you go back in. I think the body on the table also looks like Claudia Wolf as well.
Our lead takes off. Searching our surroundings, we find Eileen's medical scans and a few photos of her wounds. Crushed, Henry asks himself if Eileen's still alive somewhere. He's so down that he doesn't even speak these words out loud. As we find traces of the lost Eileen, we stumble into possibly one of the worst rooms in the series.
Is this the big face? Yeah. Everyone focuses on this room, but I thought some of the other rooms were way better. Like, there's a spike trap room, but like one of the rooms has like, a plastic coating covering things, and it very much feels like an isolation slash quarantine room. I mean, this is the big one that people reference. I thought this room is fine. I thought there were better rooms in this hallway.
Eileen's jittering eyes follow every step Henry takes in here. The self-doubt, failure, and judgment is on full display. I have more to say about this room, but we'll talk about it in a second. Another of the hospital rooms will look quite familiar to fans of SH2. This blindingly bright room echoes the lost memories of Maria suddenly getting sick in Brookhaven Hospital.
Yeah,
with this game
sense.
taking place outside of Silent Hill and James's father being the super of Henry's building, it's very likely that South Ashfield is where James and Mary once called home. With the identity of Rachel, now known to us, being a nurse who also lived in this city, we can tie her name to the one spoken of by Laura in SH2.
I didn't even know this. That's actually really cool.
Henry's neighbor is most definitely the same woman that looked after Mary during her final days. I love Henry's inner monologue here. He wonders if time is flowing differently in this specific room, or if this supernatural light is coming from heaven itself.
So you have to, so I guess to help justify, this is kind of like small town vibe. Like, obviously this is a city, right? But this is very much small town vibe. You ever watch like Lord of the Rings, right? And you're just like, wow, all these hobbits know each other, man. Like, they're in everyone else's businesses, right? I mean, the Sackville Baggins is always after the silverware and after Bag End, right? That's very much just small town vibe. Like, you know your neighbors know you. Everyone kind of knows everyone's business. If something happens to come out, everyone will know, right? Everyone will know if someone messes up or does something that, maybe is a little embarrassed. That's just small town vibe. Like, it very much comes out. So it's interesting to see, because I didn't know how many Silent Hill 2 references there were in 4. So 1 and 3 are directly connected, right? It's very much a continuation. 2 and 4 are not as strongly connected, but there's very much a linear progression there.
Feels like a piece of Mary's soul is tied to this place. James, taking fate into his own hands, seems to have caused ripples across the multiple realities of the Silent Hill universe. It doesn't take us too long, but we actually find Eileen alive, but not so well.
Eileen, relax!
Oh, I love Henry in this scene because he does like everything you should not do. Oh, Eileen having a panic attack because she literally got attacked earlier? Yeah, I'm sure just yelling at her to relax and restraining her is probably going to help, right? I mean, now if you're like an actual caregiver, right? And you're like, you need to restrain a patient because, they're a danger to themselves or something like that. That's something different. You're also trained to deal with that. Henry is John Silent Hill. I guarantee you he does not have that skill set.
Eileen is extremely
Why de-escalate when you could just gaslight, Chad? Exactly.
distressed given all that she's been through. But for the first time in the game, Henry actually strikes up a full conversation. He lets the injured woman in on what he's been going through the past several days, including the aftermath of Eileen's assault. Eileen then tells us that young Walter protected her and stopped the coat guy from killing her. Very interesting, given we saw these two standing next to each other at the apartment. Hand in hand, our shut-in hero and broken damsel set out on their last escape.
Hey, Mr. Bobby the Rabbit! New spiffy looks pretty suit, huh?
Stephen King once said that terror is when you come home and notice everything you own has been replaced with an exact substitute.
Oh boy! I sure do love Happy Burger!
It's when the lights go out and you feel something behind you. You hear it. You feel its breath against your neck. But when you turn around, nothing's there.
Second round.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's been like making this video. By the way, Robbie, I know you're watching me in your control room, wherever you are. Do you really think this little decoy Robbie the robot would trick me? Can you please let me go to work? Who else is gonna pay for all that melon bread you love to eat so much of?
Ah, yes. Melon Pond. So good. Well, I can't even say that. One day I'd like to try it. Haven't actually had to try it yet.
My precious melon bread! Yeah, okay. You can leave. For now. When you get back, you're gonna have to pay for throwing me against that wall.
It looks rather
I'm just hearing Towley at this point now. You can leave for now, but when we get back, we're gonna get real elevated. I'm a towel. Oh, this is wonderful.
soft. I guess, you wouldn't mind if I threw you against the wall, you little bastard. Is that what this is all about? Dude, that was like a year ago. Okay, how about this? When I get off my shift, I'll buy you extra Slim Jims. Deal?
Hooray!
Based.
By the way, there's only one key for all those locks, so you better get to unlocking.
Love it. Like, isn't that the club from 2? Based.
Slow night. So, that was the first half of Silent Hill 4.
Yeah. I use the term half very loosely, though, because the second half definitely comes under fire for padding and backtracking. It kind of hurts, especially because now you have to worry about Eileen. I hope you liked the Ashley section from Resident Evil 4. Imagine that, but if Ashley takes too much damage, you just literally can't escape the island.
As I replayed this portion of the game, some very obvious symbolism began to form in front of me. Silent Hill 4 is a game about being, or better yet, becoming a shut-in. From the very first steps you take, you are shut into this apartment. In every regard, SH4 is telling a story about what it feels like to be a shut-in. During the 90s, Japan would go through its lost decade. This was a time where the country would experience prolonged economic stagnation. Stock market crashes, debt crises, the list goes on.
Weird. Not that anything like that would ever happen in the US. No, sir. Not that anything like that, inflation, stagnation, lack of housing. Not that anything like that would ever happen in the US. No, sir. Not that a potential for that to happen would ever happen.
And on. Out of this lost decade came the rise of the hikikomori, a label coined by Japanese psychiatrist Tamaki Saito for his book, Social Hikikomori, Adolescence Without End. Hikikomori can be described as modern-day hermits, recluses, and shut-ins. The term itself is made up of the word hiku, to pull, and komoru, to stay inside.
Oh.
One could say that hikikomori are people who are being pulled by some kind of force to stay inside of their homes. If you're like me and grew up loving PlayStation or Nintendo, all of our favorite games were made during this lost decade.
Yeah.
Resident Evil, Silent Hill, All of these games creators lived through this time and probably had a lot of experience with friends and family shutting themselves away.
So this actually gives new context to Pokemon being very social in terms of features, even from Gen 1, right? Being able to link cable, trade with players. Gen 2 having their the cell phone service, the proprietary thing Japan had, right? Where you could hook your Game Boy Color up to like a transceiver or whatever, and you could get some bonus like online features for that. Because we had online connectivity back in like technically Gen 2, but like it was Japan proprietary, right? Mystery gift events, having to go out to get distributions and stuff. It's interesting looking at that, and then looking at something like Pokemon that is, for all intents and purposes, supposed to be a very social experience. So I think that's interesting. It's interesting to see what different companies, different studios, what they did following the Lost Decade.
The Lost Decade was a time of economic promise, a time where as long as you were working, you were guaranteed a future. When the stock market crashed, it genuinely ruined lives and careers. This loss was taken deeply to heart and forced a lot of people to hide themselves away, out of shame. The system tragically failed a lot of Japan's people. The hikikomori phenomenon hasn't slowed down since the 90s. It's only increased. With this specific case study, it's unique to a time in Japan. Looking back at this study feels oddly prescient. What was once a phenomena particular to one country is now beginning to feel more and more like the norm.
It kind of is, though. Like, it's not even that, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'll do my work and stuff, right? Like, we're streaming over on the Purple app right now. Like, I should end up streaming these on the Purple app. That's why you actually see chat on screen and stuff, right? But, like, I mean, what do you do after work when you do everything you're told to do? And just the social structure, the degradation of the third place. We've talked about this before, right? Where do you go? People in the oldie days, sure, went to, sports clubs, like sports meetups and stuff, or like shooting competitions and stuff. Back in, 10-ish years ago when I still very much kind of, did my own thing and enjoyed card games. But this was back before like the mass like death of card games, Naruto, L5R, the WoW TCG, right? Because there was about 2013, 2014, there was a mass purge, which is interesting to see them coming back at this point. Market's been shifting. I used to go to game shops, and game shops just feel depressing to me anymore. Like, sure, my outlook has changed a little bit, but we talked earlier about the stagnation of it and stuff, right? Right? Even if you want to do something, and this is a point of reflection, right? Even if you want to do something, if you want to change your situation, are there necessarily the structures in place to enable you to make those changes? So let's say, hey, you want to go for hikes and stuff now. You want to go, get together and go for hikes, see other people and stuff. Like, sure, you can go hiking and stuff, but are you even guaranteed to meet other people? Are other people just going to, stay within their own social circle where it's reasonably safe? I mean, especially in modernity, where people are so divided and volatile, and you just don't know, right? Stranger danger, right? It's very much safer to stay within your own social circles. But what about the people who lack those social circles, or who want to try to have those social circles, but are unable to? So the room takes on a very interesting meaning for me in several ways.
Playing Silent Hill 4 in the modern day was surreal. The start of this game shows us that Henry is a photographer. It also tells us that he's been trapped inside for 5 days straight. That would be torture for anyone, but could you imagine how damaging that would be for an artist? I see Henry's silent willingness as him playing along with all of the dream otherworlds he visits. As a photographer and currently a shut-in in the making, it's easy for Henry to get lost in these fantasies. It felt like I was playing Spirit Detective, investigating all of these strange occurrences in twisted but familiar locales. Investigations I had no business being a part of, yet was forced to experience. I said this earlier, but the temporary trips into the other world feel like late-night grocery runs. A shut-in isn't always locked inside. They need to venture out for food and other essential items, right? Like gathering up heals and ammo for when they really need them in this video game. What happens when you return to the apartment? It heals you. The exposure to the outside world in Henry's case is damaging, much like how it feels for a real-life hermit. Being at home is being in your safe space. It can literally be a healing process for less sociable people. And speaking of being less sociable, studies conducted on mood disorders like depression and societal situations like isolation mention shut-ins experiencing anhedonia, the
inability to experience joy or pleasure, may feel numberless interest in things you once enjoyed. Comes in many mental health conditions like depression. Treatment is able to help you regain interest in life activities, being around loved ones, listening to music. Like, humans are inherently social creatures. I would argue I'm pretty, like, introjection's not the word I'm looking for. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. Not antisocial, not even asocial. Introverted. Wow, why did it take so long to find that word? Like, I myself am very introverted, but I still need to, like, talk to others. I still need to be around others. Sometimes I get to a point where I'm just like, I kind of need to do the social thing, but I also need to get work done. Therefore, I'll stream for days on end at that point. And then I'll take a break eventually, right? Like, it's why as often as, I mentioned the Discord is probably like the best way if you're trying to like see me in the wild, right? Like, sometimes I'm just unavailable. Sometimes I just have to do other things, right? I will do like 5 days of streaming in a row, and then I need to take 2 or 3 off, and like even if it's just going outside to get a burrito, like humans in general don't do good in isolation. And it's not saying that you have to be, this hyper extroverted person, right? I mean, that's why a lot of us introverts end up liking that one friend, right? Who happens to be the extrovert, who invites you out on things. That way you can experience that social, right? It's a non-zero amount of people I've known quote that exact thing, right? You're kind of adopted by an extrovert. But, see arguments about people being volatile, people being, just so divided anymore, and you wonder why we're experiencing a lot of issues that we currently are, right? Just in general across the world. This isn't necessarily a political thing. It's not a country specific thing. When people are so divided and they're deprived of basic communication and just basic life things, people don't do well. And that's just a fact of life. People need to be social. Even if it's, I have only enough spoons to go outside and grab a burrito today, right? Hey, you went outside and grabbed a burrito. Awesome. You did what you did what you needed to. You did what you could. So this is a game I feel unfortunately ages very well.
Feeling of emotional numbness, the inability of experiencing joy like you used to. When you isolate yourself for extended periods of time, that safe space that you grow accustomed to will start to lose its luster. Going out more and experiencing new things can help with repairing your love for what was once lost. As Henry anhedonically drifts through these nightmare otherworlds, it seems like he's looking for something that'll help him feel again, much like you would with watching a scary movie, or just doing something you're not supposed to. His interactions with other trapped souls are almost non-existent. When he finally reaches Eileen, he's actually terrified of his discovery. We see his guilt manifest in the hospital multiple times. When it turns out she is relatively fine is when Henry's found that particular something to feel for, to fight for. The further you progress into the second half of the story with Eileen by your side, the more the apartment begins to change. Its healing properties cease and the other world's darkness begins to creep in.
As well, if you pick up the doll from Walter, which is a very clever trick by the game, if you do pick it up, it increases the frequency of the hauntings, if I remember correctly.
The room will flood with spectral hauntings that sap Henry's life away. These need to be purged with holy candles that illuminate the room. The more Henry leaves his nest, his cage, the more it hurts him when he has to return alone.
I like that. I very much like that. I myself have noticed, especially when I do work back to back to back, like sometimes I just I'll leave the house and I'm like, oh, I feel good. I feel like I have a level. And then I kind of just dread returning home. And I think we've all experienced this as well, right? Like, imagine it's unfortunate some people don't have to imagine. Your home situation might not necessarily be the best, right? Or you want to go out and do stuff, but you're required to be at home, or it's just easier to be at home because going out costs money, etc., right? And then when you finally go out, like let's say your buddy invites you out, maybe you have a drink, maybe you go get food, maybe you just, go out and hang out for a bit. And then you think about going home and there's that subtle dread that washes over you of going back home. That would be this feeling. I like this plot. I think she brings up, excuse me. I think they bring up a really good point. I think that they bring up a really good analysis on this, and I hadn't thought of this.
Eileen literally cannot come back through the homeward hole with you. Henry misses Eileen. I do believe Henry being locked inside this singular space for such a long time has developed anhedonia within him, but it's the second meta-narrative layer that really brought everything into focus for me. The more Henry leaves his home, the more he's breaking free from his shy, shut-in nature. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this kind of feeling in real life.
Nope, it sucks.
I mean, we all had to stay inside a few years ago. Reconnecting with folks in the real world was hard, right? Having to take care of Eileen and also fight alongside her was kinda cute. I loved how the second half of the game was an escort mission. Socially awkward, recently shut-in Henry mustered up enough courage to ask Eileen out on a spiritual date. All of the nightmare happenings of the other world felt like dodging awkward moments with the locals. You're literally showing her around Demon Town and being a gentleman, protecting her from whatever badness the city throws at the pair.
Yeah, I mean, when he meets up with Eileen, he does explain what he's been going through, so he does kind of take the role of a guide, so to speak, of, you know, hey, I have this authority. He kind of takes charge. I think I do thematically, like, I do thematically like that the back half is an escort mission. Mechanically, I hate it, though. It's a weird one. It's just, especially when I was playing through, because I have the GOG copy, right? Like, sometimes her back would look a little more foobar than other times, and I just could not get a genuine read on how bad her health was, especially because I messed up, right? Because we talked about in the Totally Pointless TV video. So you can get Eileen stuck on a fence when you backtrack through the Wish House, and you can just leave her alone because she can't physically follow you because you got her stuck on a fence. But I had to go look up, and I think it was I don't know if it was an IGN board or whatever. I think it was GameFAQs. I had to check, like, because I googled, you know, does this make Eileen's health stay static? No, if she's away from you, it actually damages her, from what I was reading. Which, I mean, it's esoteric. The game doesn't really like explain these things. The fact that I have to look these things up, because I mean, I could have totally I did get the best ending, thankfully, because easy difficulty, right? But like, mechanically, I have issues with the back half, especially because it puts a lot of pressure on you. However, thematically, I love it.
The ghosts getting all up in Henry's face felt like the most blatant representation of having an awkward social encounter with a stranger on the street. No thank you, sir. I do not want to buy your mixtape. Now, yes, this is all my personal takeaway from the material, and maybe it sounds silly in the context of Silent Hill, but it's a lot more fun than just saying Henry's like that because he's a vessel for the player to inhabit. Which, speaking of that, for years, I've heard this position on SH4 kind of forcing you to be a creepy voyeur because you can watch Eileen through the hole in the wall. Well, I didn't really see it that way given all the times Henry actually calls out to her and the other neighbors. I guess because I was sort of role-playing the game this time, I put myself in Henry's possessed shoes during my play sessions. Henry doesn't speak out loud a lot, but he does have an inner monologue, one that conveys a nonchalant but caring personality. After we find Eileen presumably dead, a lot of the flavor text in the hospital is about Eileen's safety and lack thereof. This woman is the foremost thing on Henry's mind in this instance. I know people love to relate the giant Eileen head to her staring down at Henry, judging him for being a creep, but like I said, I put myself in Henry's shoes this go around. I'm not looking at Eileen for any other reason than to see if she was okay. If I was looking through that hole, it was for a few seconds at most, then I'd arrange my inventory and get back in the field. The thought of being a salivating voyeur never once crossed my mind.
So would you say that would be a self-report? Are you in fact, would somebody who views this from the position of a voyeur perhaps be self-projecting, maybe? It's interesting to think about.
You know what did, though? How do I get out of this festering wound of an apartment complex? I see the giant Eileen head more as a representation of what is the most important thing on Henry's mind. Eileen's safety and her death, which at that point Henry fully believes is true and his fault. Eileen's giant quivering eyes following Henry's every step forces him and us to make eye contact with our failure. Bringing Eileen into this room garners no reaction from her. She can't see any of this because it's what's on Henry's mind. Remember the SH2 cast seeing people and places differently from one another? Well, the same thing applies to SH4. Henry can see this giant visage, and Eileen can actually read and see red text all throughout the forest world. Silent Hill's dark forces shape...
I couldn't actually get her to do that. Maybe it's her possession level. I don't know. I don't know what I did or what I did wrong. I was trying to read the gravestones, and I don't think she was able to read them.
The mind. I guess I chalk it up to me being a lot older and having more life experience. Sure, she's moaning and groaning suggestively. You could definitely say that's what that sounds like. But to me, it sounds more like her dying breaths played over and over again. You know, the last thing Henry heard before Eileen died in front of him about 5 minutes ago. To say that this guy is a creep for staring at this woman he barely knows and is now being punished by having to be in a small room with her giant head feels, I don't know, immature.
I feel that is, unfortunately, just kind of a thing nowadays, right? Because like we had the whole arc of, you know, remember the TikTok, you know, lady ended up recording herself at a gym, you know, saying how a dude was staring at her, and he was absolutely like feral or something, and other things that I really don't want to repeat, right? Like, and how it was like that led to like things like that actively being staged, right? Don't get me wrong, like stuff like that actually happens, right? Like you can go to a gym and some lady that you're just not interested in because you're there just to like, you know, lift weights, right? Or get cardio in, is just eyeing you up and down, right? Additionally, as a woman, you can have a dude that is you know, he's just hyperventilating, staring at you, right? It's not a good feeling for anybody, right? Like these things happen. So in an incident like that where things get fabricated, it really starts to erode comfort places for people, and insecurities and even trauma responses, whether they have been through the trauma or not. Maybe they heard about it and maybe they had, you know, trauma from just hearing the story, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? How many of us have come across a Reddit post or something, and we read it and we go, that is one of the most messed up things I have ever read in my life, and you need to go out for 2 hours. Like you put down your phone and then you leave, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, that post was traumatic, right? Because trauma is, you know, spectrum, right? And then even then, different people, you know, react to different things, right? There's people who can handle 7.62 whizzing over their head because their military training allows them to, right? There's Karen during, you know, the virus time who the world stopped for her. She couldn't get her hair cut, and that's what became, you know, Karen complaining she couldn't get her hair cut, right? Like, in her case, it's traumatic for her because the world literally stopped functioning, right? We handle trauma differently. We're all different. So, I don't know. It's interesting to bring this up, and it does hard because it was very much I don't know. It's why I still don't want to go to gyms, because recording policies and a lot of gyms I think crack down on it after that point, but no one reasonably, man, woman, they, them, right, whatever, wants to be like wants to partake in someone just crafting a narrative like that. It's not comfortable, it's not fun, but unfortunately it's become the norm, right? And, you know, maybe it's because it's part of why I don't use Twitter anymore, right? I can make 100 awesome tweets, but, you know, the 2 times I make a tweet that is negative, that's the one that gets metrics. No thanks, I'm good. I don't want to be part of something that just is incentivized by rage baiting and just negativity. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for other people. It makes me look bad, right? Simple as. I'll do other things that are just well worth my time. But I do think that this is more and more of an issue that we're experiencing in modernity. And it also devalues when genuine things actually happen. Because we have events like, you know, women going to gyms and fabricating entire, oh, he's feral, right? This makes it so that way when someone does come out and they're like, you know, hey, man, this guy was really creeping super hard. Like every time I moved machine, he was moving. People might be more dismissive, right? The boy who cried wolf, desensitization, we can make all these arguments, right? Yeah, like, I also agree with the head bit. I think there was some more sensual moaning mixed in there, but to say that it was just sensual, I think is inappropriate, because there were clearly some, raspy last breath type things, right, within that. So I think that Spear Hunter's analysis of the headroom makes a lot of sense in context.
Apologize for coming off strongly about this, but I've never been a fan of the creator of said thing is critiquing their audience for being obnoxious or weirdos. Like, what did I do to you? I bought your game. I gave you my money. Anyway, in the second...
Didn't Mind's Eye do that? Sorry, sweet brief aside. And once again, more of a modern problem, right? Where you have, developers, management at the studio who actively, throw shade.
Second half, we actually have to replay the entire game. This time we escort Eileen to the end of this mad spiral. Connecting each other world is a literal spiral staircase that brings us closer to the truth. This entire section of the game is often heavily criticized for reusing all of the same levels from before. I completely understand and agree that this could have been handled a lot better than it was.
100%. I will give credit on the thematic side of things, though, that this is going to be Henry along with Eileen, and Henry now having a different worldview, now being accompanied by Eileen, right? So it's walking down the same road you've walked 100 times, but now you have a new outlook on life, or you're sharing it with someone, right? I can see that being a theme of this.
It does suck having to replay a minorly adjusted game again, but with a person to look after. Also, we have to do the hell escalator part again? Bro, are you kidding me?
I reloaded this quite a few times.
You better pray your rusted axe iframes are on point. It's another aspect of SH4 that feels rushed and low budget. One thing I didn't have much of a problem with this time was the escort mission itself. Eileen isn't just a damsel in distress. She actually helps you fight and can use a variety of her own weapons. I can't tell you how many times I've downed an enemy only to see Eileen muscle over to it, finishing it off effortlessly. Seriously, if you give this chick the chain weapon, she goes combo mad.
I didn't know there was a chain. That being said, because I know I got the purse. I missed a couple items. Like, I got Pickaxe of Despair. I think I missed every single silver bullet. I have to look up a map. I do not know where those things are. Those things are hidden. Especially because I kept getting lost and bumping back and forth between different, especially in the forest area. I kept bumping back and forth between tiles, right? Like, just, trying to find stuff. I think I had to look up what to physically do when I got to Forest Part 2. I genuinely could not remember, or could not think about what to do. I had to look in, like, the wells for body parts of the mannequin, right? But no, Eileen's competent. Like, her AI is competent. You hand her that purse, she's gonna beat the crap out of a gumhead. Like, it's actually kind of refreshing to see. The only issue is, like, the lack of, like, recovery. And if you allow her to take too much damage, it foobars your end state.
In spite of that broken arm, Eileen will never back down. Again, I think this whole part of the game wasn't as difficult for me now, because I'm older and have more patience. There are undeniably parts of the escort journey that will be tough, but they were few and far between for me this time. What really bothered me were the manufactured, intentional moments of fear. The parts where you have to go it alone, leaving Eileen by herself.
I actually wonder if she takes damage during that section, though, because, like, if you being separated from Eileen makes her take damage, and that specific section, because she can't climb down the ladder because of her cast, I wonder if she takes damage. I'd have to have somebody who's, like, familiar with the code and how to, like, actually, like, look into that. I'd have to have them confirm or deny it.
Should know that if Eileen is alone, a variety of things can happen to her. If there are enemies in the room, she can take damage. If there's a ghost, she can get possessed. If she gets possessed, she'll start talking like a baby. It's a nightmare, and something that you need to stay on top of. This is another reason
I was told, or at least I read, that if she was alone, because I actually, like, dropped her next to Wish House, so it was a safe area, right? It was a safe area, that she just passively took damage. I could be wrong. That's at least what I got when I looked this up when I was streaming this.
And why I decided to take things slow and waste every monster I came across. I actually walked mostly everywhere with Eileen. I promised myself that no trouble would befall this woman. I would get that best ending. I kind of realized that more than any other game, Silent Hill 4 is not made for children. And that might sound funny, but I know some of you get what I mean by that. I'm talking to those of you who also got to play dark and spooky games when you were kids. Yeah. SH4 requires a certain level of maturity and patience to simply be good at. Resident Evil was always more intuitive and easy to understand, and this can be said for a few other SH games as well, but 4 is just a different breed entirely. So much of the mechanical complexity comes with careful planning and deliberation, and honestly, I really loved it this time around. To my shock, when I had finished the game, I looked up how Eileen works on a mechanical level, and it turns out the longer she goes without taking damage of any kind, the less chance she has of getting possessed. So
Interesting. I'll have to look at that video. I didn't even know this video existed, so thank you, Sphere Hunter, for pointing this out, because that actually, I love the back end of stuff like that. Like, we've talked about how I'll break down Resident Evil into, like, progress gates, and, like, how to, like, optimally path certain things, right? Like, I like the mechanical things. When I do my inevitable playthrough, because I've just been doing a lot of reactions recently, when I do my inevitable playthrough of RE9 on Insanity, yeah, I'm gonna have infinite ammo, but I'm mostly doing it for, like, the mechanical, like, how did they change this? How does this work? Because I very much enjoy the back end of it. I like knowing where enemy spawns are. I like, being able to go through a game and, like, understanding, what's behind the smoke and mirrors, right? How the game actually functions. But that's my personal play style, right?
all of that patient walking actually paid off for me. Exploring the other world for the second time makes clear who the king of this castle really is. It's Walter Sullivan. Yes, the child we've been following between each world, and the trenchcoat killer. These two spirits are the same entity. They're obvious representations of Walter's loss of innocence from the Order, and the monster that is born out of said circumstances. Walter vengefully shows us the worst parts of his life. These disjointed, painful recreations of his fragmented memories are angrily painted over with a dark, violent brush. Every ghost that we encounter in the first half are his murder victims. A terrible truth sets in, realizing that every single person Henry fails to save now return as ghostly apparitions. Cynthia, Jasper, Andrew, and Richard are all uniquely soul-trapped in Walter's nightmare. They'll block our progress as mini-bosses that we can pin down using limited-use Swords of Obedience.
I don't remember if the silver bullet actually keeps them down or not. I think it just one-shots them, right?
Their fates to be shut into this nightmare world forever. It's one of those things that really solidifies the reality of the situation. Henry's anhedonic wandering wasn't just daydreaming. He was actually witness to multiple crimes in the real world. And if there's any part of this game that had me feeling voyeuristic, it was being forced to invade each of these people's homes and watching them be brutally murdered in the most unfiltered ways. Walter's brand of torture is to show Henry the moment life slips away. The real challenge of SH4's dark narrative is to push past these horrific situations and not become one of them. Walter has been enacting a ceremony for most of his life. The 21 Sacraments for the Descent of the Holy Mother. This ritual, brought on as a contingency plan from the one and only Dahlia Gillespie, is the sacrifice of 21 souls to bring about the birth of paradise, the same religious campaign the Order desired for Heather and Claudia. Walter was taught this ritual during his time at Wish House, and has been working towards this as he bumbled through life.
It's amazing how much just comes back to Dahlia just being an absolutely awful person in the series.
Hopping from town to town, the developing Walter was at times conflicted, but always drawn back to killing and isolation. After getting caught for the murder of the Locane twins, Walter was arrested and sat in jail till his life eventually came to an end.
I don't know. So obviously there's supposed to be 21 victims, right? Depending on your ending, 19 and 21 will both be alive, right? 20 and 21, with Henry, the Receiver Wisdom, being the last one at 21, right? So if, both Eileen and Henry survive, that's 19 down. Like, we see the ghosts of, Cynthia and, the cast that we've gone over. I don't know if the first 10 because I think 11 was himself, right? He was the halfway point. I don't know if the first 10 are represented by ghosts. I don't actually know. I think I looked up the wiki entry because, like, some of his first victims were, like, I think Order personnel, if I remember correctly. But I don't know if they're embodied in the game as ghosts or which ghosts they would be.
At his own hand. What's interesting about this is after taking his own life, multiple residents of the apartment complex reported seeing a long-haired man sporting a trench coat skulking around the building. We even get to see Sullivan spying on us through Henry's front door.
That knowing stare. But why his face look like that? Why he do that with
Sullivan
his eyes?
also chases us around the other world like your typical Resident Evil pursuer. In his files, Joseph speculates that Walter had someone impersonate him to cover for his escape. What we find of Sullivan later in the game all but confirms this, but we'll talk about that in just a second.
I actually didn't know that. I was actually curious about this because I was very curious how he ended up from prison to where he ended up. I actually didn't know how that progression worked.
What draws Walter to this apartment, and specifically room 302, is the fact that he was born in this very unit. His mother and father, both abusive criminals in their own right, abandoned their child. As we look around the Otherworld building the second time, we get to hear some of Walter's childhood memories, and they are not nice to say the least.
Anyway, let's get out of here. I can't stand it anymore. If that super hears and we're in trouble. There's something about that guy. I just don't like the look of him. Little crybaby. Hurry up. Get back.
Frank would end up finding infant Walter and taking him in for a time. This is why Frank hangs on to the infant's umbilical cord like many parents would often do back in the day. It's really interesting.
I actually didn't. This was a custom. Interesting
to think about James potentially meeting a young Walter Sullivan before all of this took place. But I guess he doesn't seem too fazed by the newspaper article in SH2. Although he could have been named Walter after leaving Frank's care, or had his name changed with the cult. Just something interesting to think about. As Walter would grow in Wish House, Dahlia would promise him that in order to see his mother again, he'd have to awaken her by completing the ritual set upon him. This would bizarrely result in Walter believing that room 302 itself was his mother.
I mean, to be fair, as a child literally abandoned by their parents, and then especially taken into, like, you know, taken in by Wish House, right? I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that far of a stretch, especially because the monsters throughout the game represent Walter's view on things, right? The Sniffers are definitely, like, you know, his outlook on dogs. Clearly hasn't had animals and Walter do not go hand in hand. He clearly has had issues and does not like animals, right? And then, you know, Gumheads being people, just gibbering monstrosities, right?
It's where he was born, and is the only thing he has familial ties to. Although his death in prison was a farce, Walter would still end up taking his life. After killing his first 10 victims, Walter proceeds with the second half of the ritual, the Holy Assumption that we read about earlier. The 11th victim is him. As we carve a path all the way to the bottom of Walter's nightmare, we find the front door of room 302, the representation of his mother. Inside, we actually get to walk around the apartment in third person with Eileen.
It's the deepest part of him, yeah. Well, I guess technically, due to the event that happens here, there is deeper still. But the deepest in that spiral, his mother, is the room.
This ghostly version of the room feels different, though. This version of the room is not the same apartment that Henry's trapped in. This apartment is locked away in the past. Exploring and reading every piece of information we can get our hands on seemingly summons the spirit of Joseph Schreiber.
You've done well to make it this far.
So good.
Let me tell you something about him. Walter Sullivan. When he was a little boy, he began to believe that my apartment was actually his birth mother. He decided to free her from the stains and corruption of this world. He then performed the ceremony of the Holy Assumption and created this twisted world. Well, he's dead now, but he's still trying to complete the 21 sacraments. His boyhood desire to return to the bosom of his birth has divided him. Number 20, the mother reborn, Eileen Galvin. Number 21, the receiver of wisdom, Henry Townsend.
This figment of the once living journalist has been locked in the deepest layer of Walter Sullivan's manufactured fantasy realm. Joseph tells Henry to kill Walter to end the nightmare. The spirit then gifts us a pickaxe sticking out of one of the walls near the bedroom. A wall that we have walked past every single time we come back from and go to the other world.
I definitely got confused on this part. Chad had to help me out on this one.
Using said implement helps knock down this same wall in Henry's version of the apartment, revealing a secret storage room, the actual storage room that Joseph paved over.
So this is the part where, like, so obviously James's father is the superintendent, right? After after the journalist goes missing, right? Like, the unit had to have been sold, right? And that's how Henry gets in possession of it, right? How was the lack of square footage not recognized, if that makes sense? Unless, I mean, for some reason, superintendent didn't know the square footage, or maybe he came into possession of the apartment building later down the line and it wasn't disclosed. I feel that this one's an interesting inconsistency.
Inside is one of the most horrifying things a person could ever find in their home. Inside is the crucified corpse of Walter Sullivan. SH4's first-person camera has never been more effective as we slowly approach Sullivan's petrified remains. If Henry Townsend was a shut-in in the making, Walter is a shut-in that went too far. What shut-in life provides someone suffering from depression or extreme levels of PTSD is an isolated world of one's making. Walter performing this part of the ritual, with all of the same items James needed to create Maria, by the way, builds his very own fantasy world. A world where Walter gets to live with his mother and victims forever as an idealized version of himself.
I actually was like, I thought that the items sounded familiar. I just couldn't place them.
A strong and silent bringer of justice to those who harmed him, to those who looked down on him, and to those who even showed him kindness at his lowest points. What blows my mind about this revelation is seeing how different Walter actually looks in reality. He's got scraggly long hair, his face is shaped differently, and he isn't as bulky. Using the rebirth.
I mean, you'd think of some of the... I kind of view it like Edo Tensei, right? From Naruto, right? How, like, certain Edo Tensei versions are the older versions of themselves. Other versions are, like, a younger and, like, restored version of themselves, right? So this is, I guess, like, prime Walter Sullivan, right? I mean, a very desiccated, even, rotting and unhealthy version of him at the end. Is not the version of himself that would really be preserved, right? Like, that was used as the offering, and this is very much, I guess, his spirit. I understand the argument being made here. I think I'm a little too hand wavy on it, but I did notice the differences. It's also interesting that his body seems to be, because I mean, this has been 10 years since this, right? His body has been, arguably kind of preserved, right? Like he's not a skeleton, right? I don't necessarily know the decomposition rate, but I would assume it being this fast is kind of wild.
Long hair, his face is shaped differently, and he isn't as bulky. Using the rebirth ritual from SH2 remakes him as this cooler, more carefree version of himself. Exactly like James's idealized fantasy of his dying wife,
I guess that's fair.
The birth of the otherworld is what ended up locking Joseph into this room. Having been terrified, he paved over the storage room, locking away the unholy corpse. Through this, Walter has literally shut himself into his fantasy world, and
I guess, actually, now we think about it, right? Because nobody could get into into Henry's apartment, right? It's not impossible that it's kind of like a reverse cognito hazard where people just forget that the square footage exists. That's something that is not outside the realm of possibility, right? Because, hey, this is the right key, but the key doesn't work to actually get in. And like most everyone just kind of ignores Henry, right, for all intents and purposes. Although it's not like the world just forgot about him. I mean, to be like reverse cognito hazard, everyone who knew about this square footage just magically forgot about it. I mean, it's definitely hand-wavy and speculatory, but I could see it being a thing.
Through this, Walter has literally shut himself into his fantasy world, and he wants everyone who's had an effect on his life to be shut in with him. Walter literally shows Henry the worst parts of his life. It almost feels like an act of protest, like Walter's reaching out and saying, "Isn't my tragedy justified? You've seen and lived through it, Henry. The outside world is terrifying. Why not stay here with me? I'm gonna kill you and your girlfriend anyway. You'll be together forever." Sullivan will even show you a fully possessed Henry as a random scare event through the peephole.
I totally missed that. That's creepy. I love that. Huh.
He is literally showing you the end of your shut-in journey should you choose to give in. To be just like Walter Sullivan. When you die in this game, the game over screen is a first-person POV shot of the ceiling of Henry's bedroom. I like to imagine this not as Henry literally dying in the real world, but the game telling us Henry is now trapped in his apartment forever. Like I've said before, on this playthrough the shut-in symbolism was obvious. But to reiterate what I said, hikikomori can be thought of as people being compelled by a force to stay inside, a force that pulls you inward. Walter's blighted corpse has been pulling Henry inside this entire time.
So that fridge light is clearly on. Like everything in there is going to be just, I think it's organs in there, I think is the implication from his victims. I mean, one, that's going to smell awful. Two, bro, no, no electrician is able to just like, yeah, there's just some power draw that we can't explain, right? So I guess that further leads credence to just like reverse cognito hazard. This room doesn't exist anymore. And it's sealed off from the rest of the world, right? Quite literally. I don't know. Interesting things to think about.
This literally manifests with the in-universe hauntings that you have to cleanse with light.
What's that
one of the final hauntings is Henry's photo of the church, a symbol of societal and spiritual structure, turning into Walter's real face. That face just so happens to be staring at us from the other side of this wall. Henry stares outward onto the world looking for help. Any signs of life. Walter gleefully stares inward at us, hoping that we end up just like him. Walter chooses to lock himself inside at the unfulfilled promise of being able to see his mother again in real life. An unfulfilled promise from Dahlia and the Order, a system that fell apart years prior and has been downright forgotten. Sound familiar? Now with all that anger, all that disappointment, he chooses to unearth the cult's shitty teachings and be as destructive as spiritually possible. All of this to live with a symbolic representation of what he thinks his mother is. If Silent Hill teaches us anything, it's that even victims of the Order can heal. Alessa shares a similar series of horrors to Walter, but instead of wanting to lock herself inside a personal hell, she uses the second chance she was given by a loving father figure and continues to live as Heather, then as Cheryl. It might be hard to reckon with, but in case you need to hear it from someone else, you are not the bad things that happen to you. In this situation...
Weird. You mean you're greater than your traumas? Your traumas were unfairly doled out to you? It sucks to deal with, you know, and it's awful that it happens to people, but you are greater than the sum of your tragedies? Weird. Who would insinuate such a thing? I'm being sarcastic. That, yes, quite literally, you are greater than the sum of your tragedies.
Walter chose every bad thing that he was ever subjected to over choosing his own path in the multiple instances where the Order was no longer whispering in his ear. What crushes my heart the most is that child Walter still lingers in this fantasy world. This figment of Walter's innocence locked away has still somehow survived. Instead of coming to terms with himself, Walter's imagined perfection continues to suppress this childlike love and intrigue. Examining Walter, we find the keys of liberation, the keys to the front door. Unshackling each lock feels euphoric after 15 hours of careful survival. The hope and joy, the fear of leaving the nest is overwhelming. Of course, this wouldn't be Silent Hill if you got to walk out the front door unscathed. We find ourselves back in the Otherworld apartment. The final hour of the story sees Henry and Eileen sweeping each floor together. An unrelenting onslaught of creatures descend on the pair, but they beat every challenge they face. Eventually, we make it to Frank's apartment and collect Walter's umbilical cord. This triggers a shift in reality. Henry and Eileen are separated, and we return to the secret storage room where Walter's corpse has vanished.
So, if I remember correctly, Eileen's dialogue will actually differ when they part, depending on her possession level.
Below his cross is a black pool in the ground. Stepping into this hole, we wake up one last time in an impossible room.
So I actually do read comments, and I actually appreciate people who pointed out, centrifuge being, kind of like the center of things. Also pointing out, there's a biblical reference in there somewhere. I do actually read comments. I have trouble responding because hard for me to like paragraph if by comments. I end up doing that a lot. But I appreciate everyone who clarified, because I was very confused on why Death Machine was shaped the way it was.
In the center, a revolving device of death welcomes a seemingly mind-controlled Eileen as she begins to mindlessly walk towards her end. A massive humanoid creature hangs from the ceiling. Defending it is the idealized version of Sullivan, egging Henry on for one last showdown. Surrounding us are standing tombs covered with splattered human shapes. Devilish spears stick out of each. Crushing the umbilical cord into the massive creature weakens it. The monster...
Aren't they they're bidents, right? Aren't they two-pronged spears? I don't remember what the actual significance of that is. I know Evangelion kind of has it, right? The Lance of Longinus, right? But I vaguely... I know that there's a reason why bidents are imagery, but I could not tell you what it is offhand.
There is what remains of Walter.
The Engine Room Prevent Horizon is also a big inspiration for that. Thank you. I have yet to see it. I hear that the original like uncut, I guess, was destroyed.
The umbilical cord into the massive creature weakens it. The monster is what remains of Walter's real corpse. In a sense, you can think of this as Walter's true form. Using each of the spears damages the monster and unshades the Walter projection, leaving him vulnerable for the very first time. What follows is a beatdown from hell as these two representations of shut-in life battle for their individual freedoms. As we claim our victory, all versions of Walter are finally laid to rest. Eileen snaps out of her trance as the life leaves young Walter. Despite everything we just experienced, seeing this poor child drop like this always breaks my heart.
I love how the room actually opens after he also, expires too. It's just salt in the wound.
Didn't know any better, but at least he can sleep now, forever. The best ending you can achieve, actually escaping the apartment, is Henry finally getting past his hang-ups of being shut inside. We physically see him leave the apartment. He's moved out completely. The world is and was a scary place, but having overcome the first steps of choosing to leave, it's become a deeply beautiful and bright place to actually exist in, to live in. Also, he gets the girl in the end. Look at my man Henry with the bouquet. Eileen even tells him they have to move somewhere new. Looks like Henry got his happy ending after all. Sorry, Cynthia.
I had that wrong. For some reason, I got the endings mixed up and thought that escape and stay were inversed. Yeah, escape is the better one because you can leave. For some reason, I had it that escape means that the room kicked you out. I had a complete misunderstanding on that one. But yeah, the still good ending, but kind of worse ending is the stay ending, where you just physically cannot escape the room, and it's tragic with a lot of this context, especially using it for the context we have for Japan's lost decade.
It goes without saying, but Silent Hill 4 is a complicated game. Where Team Silent clearly lacked the time or resources to finish certain elements of gameplay or presentation, they make up for with some of the most interesting storytelling in the genre. I can't stress to you enough how much I used to dislike this game. Granted, I was younger and my interests more geared towards slower and methodical styles of horror, And I might sound like a broken record, but I really do think the passage of time has helped me meet SH4 on its own terms. I've learned in recent years that if something truly interests you, you'll have a better time committing to its quirks and qualities. What I found in that lonely room this time really spoke to me. Walter Sullivan's story is one of fear, the fear of being seen. A common feeling all shut-ins share is the sheer heartache of disappointing one's peers through their own imagined incompetence. And when I say imagined, I mean that. Give me 1 second.
Got him.
Inside of us lies limitless potential and crippling fear. The fear of not being able to live up to impossible self-imposed expectations. Maybe you made a mistake that was enough to aid in you giving up on yourself. Maybe one morning you just didn't want to get out of bed and go to work. So you retreat inward, and at first it feels fine, maybe even good. Why go outside when you can live in a perfectly predictable fantasy world of your own making? Well,
It's honestly not wrong. But there's so many logical fallacies into it, though. Like, this close is great. I love it. It's a very inspirational close. Like, when confronted with these thoughts, it's important to remember that it's a fallacy. A closed loop becomes stagnant. It will not be healthy in the long term.
That, my friends, is what makes the world so exciting and strange. Life's unpredictable nature is what helps us develop and adapt. Walter Sullivan is unable to do that. He's told a plan and he follows it. Be Henry Townsend. Go down that hole of mystery and find what's on the other side. You might not like what you see, but it's better than shutting yourself away.
Be like Henry. Stop just short of James, though. Okay, if you're just confronted with just giant holes to jump down, maybe stop just shy of that.
Giving up or taking the easy road. The society we live in right now isn't helping this phenomena go away anytime soon. Shut-ins, recluses, hermits, hikikomori, they're more plentiful than ever before. For a variety of reasons, we've become more and more isolated, and I'm not going to pretend to have the answers to fix the problem. But one thing I do know is, and forgive me for sounding saccharine, is I'm going to keep following my path. I'm going to live for me and my loved ones, and I'm going to keep taking risks. Like revisiting a game I never liked all that much. It's hard to change, but it is possible. And on that note, I've made a decision. Originally, I was only going to cover Silent Hills 1 through 3. SH4 has inspired me, so at some point in the future, I'll be talking about them all. Sorry, internet brainworms. I have to recreate my own opinions on these games. It can be really comfortable having other people think for you, being locked away in your insecurity. Listen to the predictable gospel of others. It's going to be a lot of work, and I might get disappointed on the way. But at least my adventures will be mine. If SH4 has taught me anything, it's scary being seen.
I liked it. I had a blast with this. I thought it was really good. I had a lot of fun with this. It was also really cool to go through Silent Hill 4. But with just a different perspective, right? Because, I mean, a lot of my opinion and bias was definitely, from Total Pointless TV's version of this. But, like, there was still stuff that was my own interpretation and understanding of, which I think is a great thing about these games. But this also shone a light in a lot of different ways on this. And I think explained certain things like Hikikomori, The Lost Decade, etc., that really augment this game. Is it a game that I think everyone should play? Unfortunately not. Someone who had, my father was like, because he's more getting into PC gaming because he had a Steam Deck. He's like, who's Pyramid Head? And I'm like, I explain Pyramid Head in the briefest things, but I'm like, you don't want to play Silent Hill. Because especially if people are adverse to psychological horror, if people are adverse to certain subjects, I physically just will not recommend Silent Hill to them. I do think that there is a lot of value to be gained out of this game, and if you're okay with stuff like this, if you can deal with things like this, I think there's a wonderful game here for you. But it's definitely a story, but it's a good one, and there's a lot of interpretations, a lot of inspirations to be gained from this. I think the close of this video was honestly awesome. I honestly loved this. This was really great. So thank you, Sphere Hunter, for an amazing video on this. I'd be very interested to watch some of their other work on Silent Hill and Resident Evil as well. That being said, these longer ones, we're at 2 hours, 16 minutes right now. They take a while to make, even just, reacting to them because of how I don't stop talking. Sure, I provide commentary and stuff, but I don't actually shut up, so that's a big problem I run into. So in terms of consistency, I don't know when I'd be able to get to more things like this. That being said, I like trying to pepper in some of these longer ones as I can. But very much like the ending of Silent Hill 4, I've been very much trying to get out more and do more things with my life. So I do apologize if these don't come as quick as people would expect or hope. That being said, thank you for watching. Really do appreciate it. I had a lot of fun with this. Definitely go check out Sphere Hunter, especially if you have not. As always, links are in the description down below for your convenience. And I will see you all in the next one.